Welcome to Crash Pocket! You're
Jim
fading.
Carrey?
No, it's the fade out. I
Other
don't like the
person in media culture? I got nothing. What was that? I looked to John.
It was sad. That's exactly what it was.
Oh,
Thanks, helpful.
You're welcome. I'm just trying to produce
Mr.
constructive
Sad.
criticism.
No, you're being an ass.
That too. I can do both.
he's in the corner. He can do what he wants.
Anyway, welcome to another week of podcasting goodness. Quick up front, the Wasties are playing on May 15th, the Way Station. So you should definitely come check it out. We will likely all be there. I know I will. Big changes are actually coming to crashchords.com. We're revamping the website, and we already have revamped the social media, added some new stuff. So definitely go check that out. Crash Chords at Facebook and at Crash Chords Web on Twitter.
All the social medias.
We're on Tumblr.
And I'm learning how to use all that stuff because I have absolutely no idea how to tweet.
The fact
Yeah,
that
Matt's kind of the guru.
the fact that you can
social
operate every video game system blindfolded, yet Twitter confuses you, is sad.
It's not that it confuses me. I just don't get
It doesn't
The whole-
confuse him. He just doesn't get
The
it.
machinations of hashtag this and hashtag that, which, by the way, is called an octothorpe. Just some history for you.
Thanks.
Yeah. Anyway, no, it's the whole concept of at blah 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 that bothers me.
Why? It's just a handle. It's like any other
Why couldn't the
console's
handle
handle.
have just have been their name? Like your handle should be, hello, this is John Sanders. You want to tweet
But then
me?
if you ever type the name John Sanders when you don't want the person to be attached to it, then it would always tag them. This way you have to actually put the @ symbol to tag them.
I'm actually rather happy that I have another instance in which to use Shift 2.
Shift 2.
The @ symbol.
Oh.
No other reason, aside from emails. No other reason at all.
And most of
Twitter
those-
gives me one.
most of those autofill anyway.
That's right.
Anyway.
And the other thing is the whole hashtag concept just confuses me.
It's easy. You hashtag, you run the words together, and when you click on it, it brings a list of anyone who's used that hashtag. It's actually the fastest way to spread information throughout Twitter.
Yes, except people don't like
Yes, they do. We've gotten 3 followers in the last week because I've been hashtagging stuff all week.
No.
At Jim,
That's not
hashtag
that.
so
It's
sore.
not that.
Uh-oh.
It's because everybody can use any hashtag that they want, that it's really easy to be misleading.
Now you're overanalyzing the thing you don't know how to use.
Well, that's what I do.
You're sad.
I'm a
I sit
vindictive,
as the
angry
peanut gallery
person.
and laugh.
I like to suck all the joy out of the world.
You're good at it.
I know. I practice.
You're a depressive mess. And nobody loves you.
That's true.
Well, jumping off of Bittercast, let's get into more positive things.
Why don't you
Shall
tell us
we?
about the album you chose this week, Steve?
Okay. Arc Iris by, wait for it, Arc Iris. Quite possibly the best album, I'm saying it right up front, that I have chosen by accident. It's clear. Still not sure where it will be in the running. We have to discuss it before we really hash that out. But I maintain, I did choose this album by accident, which is not really accident. I chose it sort of at random, just to see what's out lately, and I gave this album a quick preview, and considering our discussion last week on how we find new music and whatnot, I think that was a rather bold thing, to just not use it, through, like, hopping from album to album, or from artist to artist, related artist, and so forth. No, I just went through what's recently out, and then went straight toward my tastes, based on pure previews.
It's exactly how I chose the Glitch Mob last week. I just kept seeing them and seeing them and seeing them, and I was like, well, might as well give them a try.
Right,
Took some previews and was like, yeah, let's bring this on.
It's good to be bold every once in a while. Step out of the internet's idea of what you should like, or even what your friends think you should like. It's nice to just kind of be random at some point. And I think I got something pretty good out of this, because it's hard for me to place this album at the outset. I think, in many ways, you would think it would fall in certain categories like indie here and there, but then there's elements. This is like an onion layer, and it unfolds progressively.
I mean, it's like an onion. It has layers.
Bingo.
You're welcome.
Bingo. He got it.
He fixed it.
He
He didn't
fixed
get it. He fixed it.
That's me, the fixer. Yeah, I mean, based on just the first track, Money Gnomes, I thought we were getting kind of like this folk fusion album, but it takes bigger turns later on.
No, and just to prove that, let's give you a little run through of the instrumentation here and all of the members. First of all, this is spearheaded mainly by Jocie Adams, formerly of the Low Anthem. Maybe still of the Low Anthem. I'm not entirely sure about that.
I looked it up. I believe Low Anthem is now defunct.
Defunct. Well, not in vain, because she went on to some pretty bold new projects here. She is a multi-instrumentalist and a pretty amazing composer. She on this album at least, she is the primary vocalist. Also piano, keyboards, clarinet, and guitar. All that is her. In addition, her entourage here consists of Mike Irwin on trumpet and backing vocals, Max Johnson on electric bass, Charlie Rose on trombone, electric guitar, banjo, and also vocals, Andrew Barr on mostly main percussion, and then on more backing vocals we've got Leighton Gunther, Martha Gunther, Laura Cortez, this just goes on and on and on, Zachary Tenorio Miller, and Robin Rizek on cello, which is very prominent. So, probably the biggest entourage we've had in a while.
Definitely
Yes.
one of the larger bands we've had
Yes.
on the podcast, sure.
Even on the outside, most of
I
what
mean, I
we've
guess
dealt with is-
Chick Corea's band might have been as large.
No, not at all. Not at
No?
all. That was
Yeah.
a small, tight little ensemble.
Was it?
6 or 7 at most.
Yeah, just the basics of a jazz ensemble, actually.
6 or 7 isn't small to me, but I
For a
guess
jazz
for jazz
band, that's
it is.
actually-
Well,
Yeah.
you know, so it's all 6s and 7s. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Can we please just go to the first track?
Oh, we will go to the first track. Money Gnomes.
So yeah, this song, like I said before, at the outset seemed very much like a folk fusion song. It hit those very heavy instrumental notes as far
Actually,
as
at the outset, it reminded me a lot of Kings of Convenience.
Jaunty?
You know, sort of. Oh, no, jaunty is not the word I'd use to describe it. Much more muted than that. More of a silent, joyous air to it.
It has-
Soft, yet joyous.
it had a sweet start. It kind of put you in the mood for what you thought you were going to get at least.
Well, this is why when I announced it last week, I stressed some indie influence, like, based on this first track. This was some kind of Gautier imitation here, just based on the opening verse. But it's amazing how quick that just whittles away. Although first I want to defend my reason for saying it. It's based on a common trend that you see a lot of these days. Quirky choice of instruments, as the ones I stated before, specifically in this intro here and the first verse. Banjo, extra percussion, sort of like wood blocks, I think. You get all this, in the opening that doesn't really feel like this is stepping out of its time at all, or out of its place, out of its genre. And then, as I said, that whittles away with the B section. This section that has the effect of a bridge, but if it is a bridge, it's a bold bridge, such that it's probably really the chorus, considering that it comes back a couple of times here. But it's almost like a whole new chapter to this track. And this is a running theme here, because later on, when she makes her changes, they change.
Significantly in both tempo and tone.
Yes.
She'll stop on a dime, and it's amazing how Arca has the ability to stop on a dime and to really change the tempo without actually losing the flow of the music itself. Whether it's in the introductions into the A sections or just from an A to B, it's definitely a lot more intelligent than what you see in a lot of those changes. And it's refreshing to hear these, because not only is that speed, and I love it when she slows down, but it's also the way the layering is done. Because when you go from this introduction into this, I guess, A section, you're calling it the bridge or chorus or whatnot, but the
Oh
A
no, when I was
section-
talking about the introduction, I was kind of merging it with the verse. So the verse would
The
be
first
the A
verse.
section.
Yeah.
The B section that I'm talking about is the primary chorus, which is the waltz in this first
Yes.
track, which
But-
has this long, gorgeous melody across it. And it also, well, it's a waltz, but it's really in more 6/8, so you feel it more in 6 than you do 3. But
It's
beautiful.
different uses of the same instruments in both of them. I mean, in one section, there was just such extremely muted but well-stated piano accents that I just heard in my ears, just would every once in a while just poke through everything else, that were just beautiful. And this is not how the piano was being used previously. I love that kind of use of it. Taking the same instrument and using it completely differently.
I'm impressed that you heard them in your ears. It's not where I usually hear them.
You hear them in your soul.
There he goes. He fixed that right up.
But this is coupled with an incredible vocalist. Right off the bat, just putting it out there, she is an amazing vocalist. Absolutely
amazing. One of the best I think we've had. One of the best female vocalists that we've had, for sure. Just not only in skill and inflection, although mainly in inflection, but personality behind that as well. You know, it's very easy to add inflection even for something that you're just kind of singing but don't really believe. This is clearly not the case here. Her heart is in every single word. Even the lyrics just in this, of course, the waltz is kind of a dead giveaway. It's in the lyrics. "Dance me round," she cried to him. "I'll waltz you till you love me. I watch her fly the boiling sky from deep beneath the wilted leaves, her body screaming for his ploy. Why must riches make us thieves?" That's the next thing I want to get to. Lyrically, this album, front to back, I think is some of the best lyrics we've had, period. And I say that in terms of, even if not every single lyric just stands out to you, just pure master of
imagery.
Of imagery.
Oh, sorry.
He took your word.
I've been trying to get that out for the last 10 minutes. Yes, the reason the lyrics stand so strong on their own here is because of the very strong imagery. She's very descriptive in how she talks about every scene she's putting together. You can easily picture what she's singing about.
Love has no place in a dreary world, obsessed with shiny things. Just unfantastic happenings, not approved by Cupid's rings. Unfantastic. Which is that? Who phrases it like that?
It's a funny way to phrase unfantastic.
Just
as if
unfantastic happenings.
It's
the most verbose way I've heard of saying mediocrity, and mediocrity is verbose to begin with.
Yeah, and it's funny. You know, normally when you hear something that's verbose, I guess in lyrics, sometimes it can be a little bit too thick, I suppose. A little bit too weighted, you know, for the sake of the song. But there's something about, again, her inflection which just draws you in, that you can't help but love her twist on these simple phrases. Well, because in essence, there's a theme here, just in this song, and it's of course the way money kind of ruins love.
It's inflection. It's inflection, imagery, and even though the lyrics have simplicity at moments, it's the specific words she chooses and how she strings them together.
It really is just poetry.
It's very poetic.
I'm going to start.
I would move that further with a doctorate level creative writing. I actually would go that far with this. So this is the kind of stuff that really I don't often find in music. I need to go to separate. I need to read this off a page with nothing else in mind in order to get this caliber of material. The fact that there's music there is almost secondary, and that's bizarre considering that the music is so strong in its own right. So this is a pretty strong start. Even so, the personality, I suppose, or where this particular song falls is really not at the climax by far from this album. It's very strong, but it's strong in the same vein as we've had other strong things before.
It's straightforward.
You can do a lot with indie, and I feel like this song, even though it's got bold shifts, is still indie at heart.
Yeah, it's a very straightforward song in its actual presentation. You're not going to be really thrown for any loops. These loops are actually coming up much later in the album.
It serves its exact purpose as the first track on the album. It does exactly what it's supposed to do.
You do get a little more beauty in the vocals, as if you haven't got enough beauty to this point, but toward the end, the outro, because it's leading into the second track, which gets a lot more serious, I think. This is sort of a lighthearted intro. You know, I was saying about money. It's kind of something down to earth, something we can all relate to. The second track goes deeper. But there's a pretty cool fade out here at the end. Not so much a fade out, but there's a point in which it gets very, very quiet, and you hear her vocals sort of rise from the left ear, kind of like a seraph, and they overtake everything, and it's just her vocals. The rest of the instruments fade out, and then they come back in. And it's It's on the final phrase here, which is actually separate from the rest of the song. That doesn't get repeated until the end. You could almost consider it a C section or some kind of secondary chorus. That's love me please, love me true, love me beautifully. Who, she asks most critically, is speaking down to me. Love me please, love me true, love me beautifully. It's great. She waits till the end of the song to bring this in. It's interesting.
It does a good job of actually setting up the theme work for the next song, Lost on Me.
So the thing about Lost on Me that really gets me is from the moment it starts, it's creating this atmosphere, and really from beginning to end evolves in a way that a lot of the other songs on the album don't. And I'm not saying that there's not evolution in this album, I'm just saying this particular song has a way of moving that really goes through stages that, and each stage hooks you in a different way.
I'm going to walk you through those stages whenever you're ready.
Me first, because I know what you're going to want to do for this.
I'm going to.
It's extremely halting in its actual melodies and phrase work in the lyrics, and because of that, it just keeps. It seems like it's all rise with no culmination. It's pure anticipation throughout most of the song.
And I see where you get that. I really do. I think there might be a reason for that. And it's partially because it seems to be stepping into some kind of dream world here. Even though it's grounded in a very grim reality when you follow the lyrics, there's a dream world aspect to this. And I understand why. Because if you look at the lyrical content here, holding on, is it too long? Masturbating on a sorrowed mind. Holding on, is it too long? Masticating on an empty mind. Now, I don't think we should really just take the words masturbating on a sorrowed mind as metaphor here. I think this song, especially as you go through it, is really about sort of thinking fondly, which of course can sometimes be masturbating to an ex-lover of some kind. And there is a dreamlike world to that, I think. To something that is gone and dead, and yet you dream of it nostalgically, even if for naught. That's what the essence of what I get here, and it might be why it seems to be building, why you felt it seems to be building and building and building, but it will never amount to anything, because whatever it would amount to is done already. It's finished.
It also plays up the idea of, well, the cruder side of that idea of masturbation. It's a rising because it is the anticipation, and with the phrase "still ours," the culmination of, how do I put this without really starting to sound
You're
cheap?
looking for the word release.
Thank you. Yes, it's the release of the emotions. It's dual in that case, and it does a great job of playing both sides very well.
That's why I don't think there really is going to be a release here, even though there very well could be a release in real life. It's just not relevant here. The release is the metaphor.
Directly after Still Hours, it goes into a very almost somber scheme.
The most somber release one could possibly expect.
Well, just think of how lonely and everything like that idea is. I mean, it's a combination of both, and it does personify both for me.
And there's musical evidence all over this to support me, to support us in this concept here. First of all, in the dream worlds, the dreamlike state that you get in the very beginning, you have the introduction of a soundbite that sounds like a reversal of time. It's actually the kind of soundbite that you get when you play something in reverse. You get those really harsh peaks, because they're sliding up as opposed to playing instantly as a high attack. Instead, it's a low attack, harsh decay. That's the inverse of something when you play it in reverse. And that right there often is used as a metaphor for nostalgia. So if you play something in reverse, you start to think of it in reverse, and lots of... it brings me back to certain video games, such as Braid, for instance, where you can actually reverse time and whatnot. They would use that soundbite because not only would you be going briefly back in time, but so would the music.
The music would reverse as you reversed. Yeah.
Also, Prince of Persia is very well
did that as well. Yeah,
exactly.
And it was I get that concept. I understand where.
And from that soundbite, it invokes memories. Now, beyond that, getting into a little bit more technical musical stuff here, we start out with something it's an amixolydian, right? Now, mixolydian is that mode which just is very similar to a major mode, but it's got that flat seventh. In other words, generally, like, happy, everything seems to be okay, but that flat 7 seems to imply a little bit of awkwardness to it. And you get that awkwardness throughout this track here. Like, something should be joyous, but is simply not. Again, going back to masturbating on a sorrowed mind. That kind of speaks for something that should not be joyous.
The line, masturbating on a sorrowed mind, is a self-reflective statement as well, because it's actually medically proven that a self-release can cause depression. So,
but again, conversely, it can also be therapeutic.
Yes,
so that's the
well. It depends on your
twist.
It depends on your mental state and your emotional well-being. But a depressed person masturbating will perpetuate depression, and so it can be commenting on that as well.
Very well can. I mean, that's why I think a lot of this song is an illusion, and that's why I interpret it in the beginning as sort of a dreamlike state. It's an illusion of happiness. That's what that action would entail when you take to doing that action, because it's fruitless, absolutely fruitless.
Well, the idea of staying in it also can be compared to staying in a dead relationship and using that masturbation as a release, but the reality that you're with someone who you are not getting that fulfillment from, and it just makes it worse. So you're dreaming of something that would be better, even though it doesn't exist.
Yeah, and this is dripping throughout the lyrics here. Our molding minds are rotting waste, or each other's second faces, right? That's so removed. You could not get any less connected than that.
Yeah.
So this song really throws a lot at you, I think, for a second song, but it's not done yet, because then after that you go into these. First of all, for this mixolydian section here, this awkward part, it's foreshadowing in a way, because you get these longing melodies. You have this ethereal piano, but then that's followed by this instrumental interlude, which goes into kind of an F-Lydian thing, which is another awkwardness in itself. It's also similar to major, with the exception of a sharp 4. And the funny thing is, when I think of Lydian, I actually am thrown straight back to other influences here. In fact, this whole album is throwing me back to other influences that I personally relate with. Because one thing that we cited Lydian all over was Godsticks. Godsticks was like Lydian on like the first, second, third, fourth, fifth track was all Lydian. It's actually they're responsible for making me perceive the Lydian mode as to be used as art in modern music. But even though it was a little bit fleeting here, I thought directly back to their track Caught in a Bind. It had the same awkwardness, which is funny because that was their second track, which is really their first content track, when the first track on Envisaged Conundrum was just Convergence, which was more of an opening soundbite. And in a sense of this album, it's almost the same progression. The opening track is not the soundbite, but it's very light in terms of theme. When you consider the magnitude of this track, this track is hitting every mark, field-wise.
The magnitude of this track is also unlike almost anything else on the rest of the album. There are tracks that also hit it in a different way, but this song is very heavy, very, very heavy. And I don't say that as a bad thing, but emotionally, content, lyrically, like, it's just a heavy song.
Yeah, I'm gonna take us on to the what I consider to be the chorus here. That's symphonies of words to please your expectations constantly. Again, building to almost nothing. It's funny because we get it on that. We're sort of in like it jumps to A, then it goes to like an F major 7, and she starts singing on the 7th. But it's funny because then right after that it goes to C major, which is much more of a release the second you jump to C major. It's like it loses sight of the key areas, like it's almost a shadow in the past itself. So you have reflection within the music here, within the chordal changes you have reflection. So it's really hitting that home, but it's funny because it gives the implication of release with C major. Really, really strange.
Yeah.
It's an odd progression.
And then,
that's why I love it so much.
I really like how it's very well tied together with the outro. I like that. I mean, even though it was it was heard in the first track, it really becomes prominent in the second track with that cello outro. You really get a sense for the cellist's skill, and it really wraps up this track kind of nicely as it kind of comes to a culmination with that sound.
Yeah. There's you said a cello particularly. Yeah. It's funny because there was actually another element here, instrumentally, that really, really got me. And it brought me back to another influence. Remember I said there's lots of influence, not just Godsticks here, which of course not influencing them, perhaps, but it's funny the way we've talked about this before on other podcasts when we've reviewed Godsticks, and also As Tall as Lions, way back in episode 3 here. There was a usage of a muted trumpet in Duermete, which was off of You Can't Take It With You, As Tall as Lions. Almost the same, used in almost the same exact way right here, toward the end. There's these muted trumpets just sort of accenting moments throughout the verses, and then they come back sort of in a big way toward the end, and in all these instrumental interludes. It adds another ethereal quality to this track, which I think is unlike what we hear on the rest of the album.
Yeah, and I knew it was there, but I mean, you really get a sense of that trumpet-cello dichotomy in the next track.
Not
too.
Muted, by the way, muffled trumpets.
Muffled,
excuse me.
yeah.
I would actually argue ethereal is not what I feel. In fact, that outro would be probably the most grounded part of the entire song. It seems the most realistic of it.
Well, it's this idea that is bringing you back to reality. Like
yeah, that's where I felt it.
This dream
Maybe.
state is
actually,
coming to an end.
I think I'm starting to agree with you on that.
It was ascension, culmination, depressive release, and then
this kind of falling into reality.
Yeah, reintegration into the real.
Well, there is the full pull away where we leave completely the song when we go into that whole Still Hours bit.
Yes.
Still Hours bit is probably the most rock sounding part of this track.
It's the most energetic.
It's the most energetic.
It is the culmination.
I'm not sure I would consider it as much of a culmination because it's still just like you said before. It's building, but not quite to me.
Well, it's still a faux ascension, a faux plateau here. This is not, the high quality of life that you want. This is really just an illusion.
Well, then again, you might be supported by the preceding paragraph here.
The whole
stanza, swimming in ephemeral seeds. These songs of ours, the giving tree.
The whole song is an illusion until you get to the end. It is a faux reality imposed upon by her memories.
Yeah. And then I think also that's really realized with sort of a soliloquy here, the follow-up to the whole Still Hours bit, where everything pulls away and becomes so soft and slow. And it's really a full-on C-section, I think, for this track. It pulls so sharply away from everything else. That's the part where it's take a chance on something new. And this is interesting because I found, I wasn't able to find most of this in the lyrics, like on the internet and whatnot. It's actually, it's separate. I think who even knows if it was published? I'm not entirely sure. This seems to have, it's implied that this is some sort of insert here, maybe, which a soliloquy is sort of an insert, not content. But take a chance on something new is almost as if it's a preaching amidst this to sort of pull out of this fake world that you've been living in. So it's pretty powerful stuff here. Second track only.
Let's hit the third track now, Whiskey Man. So this gives us a little bit of a reprieve from the heaviness of the previous track.
It brings us back to indie folk.
Yeah. So this one I thought had a great folk flow from the moment it started. And what really sold this track for me was the trumpet-cello pairing. It's just a combination that you don't hear a lot, and it really works here. It's just this insane building on each other and pairing that I'm just really not used to hearing, and I thought it worked really well in this song.
It does do a great job of outroing it, if I'm not mistaken, but in the beginning of the song, especially since it started acoustic and then added in the strings, I was getting a huge Good Riddance Green Day vibe. A song I love and was a song for
Green Day. Well, they're not folk. They're
I mean the specific song itself.
No. Let me finish my point, please. They're folk influenced, and you see it in some of their songs. But Good Riddance is really just a storytelling folk song. I mean, it's a strumming folk song. So getting that connection is not that far-fetched.
And it was taking that sweet acoustic sound, that sweet, lovely violin complementing both the vocals and the guitar, and adding in that beautiful, simple bass beat that really made this a great song.
That's what really moves the song, too, and strings it together.
I would argue that at this point in the album, especially considering what we just came off of, this is one of the only things that moved this song. I enjoy this song, but it's not as something I had as strong of a connection to. I think on the building aspect of these first 3 tracks here, to be thrown back to this is sort of the safer part of this album. You know, indie folk, I can find it here and there. Granted, it's still done here more superb than 99% of what's out there, but it may not be precisely what I'm looking for here. I'm looking for the kind of brilliance and intricate qualities that you find in track 2. There's very beautiful harmonies, and it's all a duet. It's sort of in unison from the get-go. I also thought it sounded a little bit old-fashioned. And that's not in a negative sense. It took indie folk and kind of spun it back to almost a 60s, 70s folk style. I could hear that in just little choices in the melody.
Well, you can hear it in the singing style, too. It was very much of that era.
But I'm certainly not bashing the song. I think that mainly is because of the music. The bass pushes it along.
Well, that drum...
Also, in interlude, this little motif that returns, these little interludes where the cello doubles the trumpet. That's another really strong one.
I really like how they double each other, and I think that I agree, though, with John that beat, that simple bass drum beat, is a great backbone for the song. It's really what stitches everything together. Like, the sound would have been good on its own, but that backbeat is the spine of the song that really, really moves it.
It's more like the core content was just a little bit weak, but I think the layering of this track really ties it together in the end.
It's got a great production value on it, for sure.
The way it thickens up in the second verse and whatnot.
I think it might be... a content issue as well, because you're right, it's not nearly as strong as the previous 2 tracks, but it is more approachable, and this is a song I was singing along with second time I heard it, and I rarely sing along with female vocalists because I'm kind of intimidated of the fact that I can't actually hit the notes they hit. I just don't prefer doing so. But it's the fact that this is really just a song about something bad.
Well, it's funny, I had an opposite feeling with that. Like, I stare at the lyrics right now, and it doesn't come back in the same way that all the other lyrics do. The other lyrics, the melodies are intertwined with them. They're attached. This, not as strong for me. I don't know.
This is all about alcoholism.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of songs on this album that really deal with some pretty messed up things. We'll get to a few more later on, but even Money Gnomes, like, it deals with just greed, and the content of these, the whole band's approaching a pretty, like, messed up topic and presenting it in a satirical way.
There are things that are more approachable for some people and less approachable for others. But of course, there are also things that are a lot more common, than others. Problems that are more common. Alcoholism, well, it's pretty common. And country music deals a lot with it, and that's why this song felt very country to me.
Right, but also the thing is that even though this song is a little bit faster paced and a little bit lighter than the previous 2 tracks, thematically it's still right on course with the other 2.
Oh, sure.
It very much fits the structure that they're starting to build with this record.
Just one of the verses, curtains close, your friends go home, take your wine so you won't ride alone, to whatever place this night will be your home. I mean, it's satirically glorifying it. And it's that kind of a twist on it, which is what might actually take away from it a little bit. And this comes up much later on in another song, which is the same thing. And I think that's why it's a little bit weaker. It doesn't have quite the level of that poetic nature I was already falling in love with. I don't know.
Well, no, it's just the lyrical style is very adaptive. Like, I hear the country twist within this, just in the words. Crack of pain, catch the rain, with open palms against the plain. Like, it's, you could throw it right into that.
Stylistically, it fits exactly what they're going for.
Like a tavern by a gas station somewhere like 10 miles down Route 66 and whatnot, away from the nearest way station. it's in a different world. I'm not going to say that it's removed from the album, certain thematically,
No, it's
but
definitely not.
No.
I do think this is more approachable for a certain genre.
Sure.
And I also felt that because of another similarity that I found in singing and playing style, and that was to Mumford & Sons, which I find is one of the most accessible. I mean, even though it's not my personal taste, I find them very accessible. They've been able to bring folk to people that otherwise may not consider the genre. It's
Yes.
strange that they've been able to do that, but I don't know, the way about them. that little way they carry themselves, who knows. Either way, I didn't have as much of a connection to this song, because I think the best is yet to come for sure. Canadian Cowboy.
This is track 4.
This is an interesting twist, because the title might have you perceive that this is something other than it is, or something more similar, perhaps, to the previous track. Canadian Cowboy sounds pretty rural. Well, sounds
But
pretty...
it's actually not. The fascinating thing is that presentation-wise, this is actually a Broadway ballad.
This is incredibly theatrical.
Yeah, and it's just kind of caught me off guard, because, again, Canadian Cowboy, you think country may be something a little more, even more rural than that, or stick with the folk theme, but no, this is on-stage, piano intro, Broadway ballad.
This is also responsible, as if the previous had not done it. I mean, as if track 2 had not done it, but this made me adore her vocal style, because she has the breathy release in almost every single line that makes it feel as if the words were powerful enough to draw her away from the music itself, to draw her away from the melodies, and be a lot more down-to-earth in her speech.
The term is sprekgesang,
Sprekgesang.
in which it's a manner of singing in which pitches are sung, but the articulation is rapid and loose like speech.
Exactly.
And this was magical.
This is
This
something
got
that John
me
pointed out.
purely smiling.
It's something that John pointed out to me in the manner in which she was singing. I was like, that has a name. I know that has a name. And sure enough, the name is Sprekgesang, which I remember well. It's a common thread in like old German opera. But then you see it a lot in many other facilities, and this is certainly one of the best I've seen it in modern music. Because
it's a very
it helps.
matter-of-factual way of actually singing a line. Instead of, flowing the words together, you actually would say something like, that don't even begin to spring. Like, actually say it.
That don't even begin to spring. Yeah, exactly. It's a way of sort of using... It's a vocal tool, is what it is. It's a way of using vocals, which are a very manipulative device, obviously, in many ways, more so than any instrument, because they are you. They are you. You have ultimate control over every little inflection. As much as you can try to fake that control over every instrument, you never have quite as much power as a trained vocalist. And she's using that better than I hear hardly any other vocalist use it. Because often there is that drive to keep with the melody, to keep with what was written on the page. And here I feel like there's a performance in this obviously crafted studio release. There's personality behind that, as if it could never be done again. And I'm sure it's done over and over in all of her concerts. But she has that much power behind each and every lyric.
And the lyrics themselves are just phenomenal. One of my favorite lines, don't look back, envy me, let me envy you. Let's grin in green and gold. If just for now, that's all, you fell to me.
Let's talk about some of these lyrics and talk about the theme going on here. Canadian Cowboy. What comes to my mind is this rugged lumberjack type of character.
Yet
this
still
man,
a gentleman, polite
Of
in
course.
opening of doors.
everything that probably many girls out there are swooning over. At the same time, there is this pull away here. There is this desire not to quite fall too much in love with this guy. As much as every word might seem to sort of shower him with desire. Slip your arms around my waist. Let me have a little taste of your worried lips of cigarettes. I mean, this imagery is very, very thick. And of a man old and wise and worn to tears, only the prettiest kind. Canadian Cowboy, you're pulling my mind. There's clear desire here, and yet...
The chorus New love, even if love's not the same. Not the name. New love, even if it's not the same. What a lovely game, what a lovely game.
There you go.
And the inflection in those lines is so dramatically different than what she was singing previously. I don't know how to take it. It's
much more of a matter-of-fact kind of thing, just like you were saying before, as if this is just another phase. Like, there's clear desire here. It's being in the moment,
it's deep,
but as if it's not permanent. There's something not permanent to this.
It's the one night stand idea almost.
Exactly.
It's this idea of love him and leave him, and but it's sang in such a romantic Broadway ballad style. It's very conflicting, but in the best of ways.
But it's also because of the man himself. I think, not just because of her. It's actually very very, very vague on, I think, her reactions here, but it may be because of the man himself. Very clear on what he is. You search me with your blue-gray eyes, tell me what is left inside, this house that feels so dry, this shell of a man. He's as lost in many ways as she is implied to be. So, again, coming off, perhaps not the last track, but at least coming off Lost on Me, there's some deep, deep themes going on here. And I found myself a lot more drawn into this track than I expected, because there are changes that come up here, specifically in the chorus. Canadian cowboy, you're pulling my mind. And she has a way of drawing out that final word, mind, and she has a vibrato that is very stifled. It halts here and there, as if, again, she is on the verge of breaking down at the word itself. It's such a short, fleeting chorus. Canadian cowboy, you're pulling my mind. But the chord changes in here from C major to C diminished, this transition right beforehand. Then all the chorus comes in with this ah, and then G major, B minor, F major 7, and she holds the E, and that's where she goes to mind. And the piano fades out and fluffs it up into this ninth. That's weird. That's I mean, it's all about presentation in the end. You know how I love ninth chords? Well, that, again, it's all in context. You could simply state a ninth chord, or you can have a suspension, as she does before the ninth chord, holding that E. Amazing.
And while we're on the topic of instrumentation, there's a really great part around the 2/3 mark, around 420, I guess, in the song, where they have all of this beautiful stuff going on, and then a great, beautiful round drum roll that really follows through with the rest of what's going on and fills right in. It feels like a natural progression, and it really caught my attention because there's really not another moment on the album like this, at least with the drums. This kind of rapid drum playing that felt almost rock and roll, but also still felt very theatrical, which fit with the scene they were making.
In fact, this whole song is actually broken up by instrumentation, by actual, playing around and almost solo work in between the verses.
Oh yeah,
there's the sections, a 4-part piece.
There's a jam in there, actually.
Yeah.
Right after the vibrato of that final line in the chorus. There, you're pulling my mind. It's very, very sad moment, and then all of a sudden we go into this jam between D minor and G major. So these interludes really seem to complement the rest of it so well. It's a sadder jam, but then again, you can never be too sad when you're going from 1 to 5, so 1 to 4, excuse me.
I wanted to skip the jams.
Yeah, interesting.
I was so enamored with the way she was singing in this song. I wanted to skip the music.
You might have a point there. I think you do actually have a point there, because as much as I love a good jam, I'm not sure it was so needed in a track like this.
Except for one part.
Here's an interesting image, just quickly, before... At this moment, right at the end of that chorus, and I'm going to really harp on this moment because I think it's one of the crowning moments in this entire album here. Right at the end of that chorus, you're pulling my mind. There's, on her vibrato there's like a teardrop that comes to mind. It's pastoral, like a faded image from years and years and years ago. And I had a very, very odd reference here for anyone that catches it. Manos, the Hands of Fate ring a bell?
I mean, I know of the movie and the MST3K bashing of it.
Yes, we should all know of the MST3K bashing of that film. But at some point, you should realize that even behind that, there's some very odd and interesting music in that, which gets made fun of throughout because it's very strangely applied, I think, to that film. But it's it has the sadness of this exact moment. And in many ways, that movie, a forgotten film that never got off the ground because it wasn't very good, it has the appeal almost of a faded image. It is a forgotten relic of time. The quality of the film, the colors and everything, and yet the music from that film is almost the same as this exact chord right here. Bizarre. Just a bizarre little moment that I had. But I think they should have expanded on that. You're right, John. I think they should have expanded on that sadness. A jam was not so necessary. It's my only problem with this track.
There was a great part in that jamming, and that was in the outro, when you were getting those muted horns and the strings going back and forth, and actually alternating. The strings would be letting off a long note, and then the horns would step in and get more complicated and do the same thing. Let off on a long note and let the strings jump back in. That back and forth, that tete-a-tete, was really interesting, and had a beautiful piano following that up that just brought everything down. But in this case, I kind of didn't want the piano. I kind of wanted it to end on strings and horns.
I liked the piano outro.
I liked
personally.
it. It was beautiful, but I felt like that was actually a little unnecessary.
Yeah, this can all boil down to nitpicking at the end. I think this is another one of those strange anticlimactic tracks where your climax falls in a very gut-wrenching moment, which is almost anything but a climax, pulling my mind. Think of the line, pulling my mind. It's not so much you're blowing my mind, you're pulling my mind, as if it's a draw of drawing you away from yourself. Strange. I don't know. Very interesting at this point, I think, theme-wise. There's some very interesting concepts that don't quite... they have a way of attacking, I think, something that is common, and then putting a twist on it without necessarily saying that it is one thing or the other. It simply just is. No opinions yet.
That actually is a good explanation for the next song, Singing So Sweet, which...
Singing so sweetly.
So sweetly? Oh, yep. Sorry, forgot the Y. This song is a song straight out of a Western bordello almost, or a Western vaudeville-style striptease.
The word you're looking for is ragtime.
Not just ragtime. It's actually in the imagery of the words themselves, the lyrics themselves, that really have that idea of a mistress or a dancer or a singer in a bar singing to, cowboys.
That's exactly the kind of thing in which ragtime would have been applied back in the day.
No, but I'm not talking ragtime. I'm talking the very specific style of what I'm getting visually.
Well, vaudevillian pulled from ragtime really, really strongly, though. That's the thing. So I see. And I see where your brain is going to vaudeville directly because of the theatrical element here. And
Yet, the choruses are so sweet, so sensual, and so heartfelt that it's an incredible duality.
This is another one of those powerful shifts. These choruses, again, they're like anti-choruses. Choruses you think are going to be something rousing. Instead, here, you have this, ooh, down in thirds. I'm not going to sing it. Why spoil it anyway? It's down in thirds. You have this a dual harmony here, just rising down in descending in thirds. Now that you're home, I will take my sweet new time with you again. And this word again has this sort of parabolic rise and fall before we punch it right back into that strong horn theme, that's the trombone, the trumpets, everything joins in at this point. This is, I guess you're right in maybe pulling it a little bit away from ragtime in that you don't often hear ragtime with a strong jazz band behind it. It's thought of as just a solitary piano thing, but it does not have to be. And this is that example.
Well, the verses are very much constructed in this feeling of this theatricality for...
We'll use it.
Yeah, close enough. But that scene, that kind of idea, like the choruses are very heartfelt, like the singer, the subject is getting very personal, but then heading back towards the verse, he or she jumps back into the show. I've got to put my face back on. I've got to get back into the show.
Like, okay, it's one of my favorite lines. I know Matt loved this line too. I'm a kitty cat. I keep on curling. Until I am a ball, I keep on swirling between your legs so you can't hide there at all. The way she's singing in these verses is very much...
It's very playful.
It's naughty and playful, yet the chorus is something you would really only say to your loved one in bed.
So there's
lights
very much
out. It's such a back and forth.
There is a dichotomy there. There's the show, there's the world, the
You're
show
trying
you
to
put
get a
on for
blush.
others. Yeah.
You're trying to get him to blush, and yet the choruses are like the true heartfelt candor.
They're candid, yeah. It's I think that right in it right there is the theme. Especially considering how slow and breathy again the well, not breathy but breathing. The lyrics there, they take so much time with that. Even if though it's just, now that you're home, I will take my sweet new time with you again. But it's so drawn out. Every little syllable with so much inflection as a result of that melody. And then it's just thrown right back into the heart of it, right back into the mix. It's, again, shifts here. Really, really powerful. Often you don't get this. I find that most of our problem is, in music, is that the verses and choruses are not different enough. You know, you can be subtle, but subtlety is not even in her language here, it seems.
It's completely apples and oranges at some points.
Yeah.
It's brash metaphors.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And and the funny thing is, it's also a lot of genre hopping too. Like,
yeah, so far we've had quite a bit.
And
all could be, quote, folkish,
but they're all
folk-oriented, or really like kind of Americana style.
Only a few of them were folk. The rest really fit into other things. Like that, the song before this, "Canadian Cowboy," is nothing but a Broadway style show tune almost. Like it's structured.
I had a name for this album if I could put one down, and that is impressionistic vaudeville.
Yeah. I like that, and I mean the next track really plays into that too. I mean, track 6, "Ditch," I mean, starts with the singer singing doo-wop, like the words doo-wop, because it's a doo-wop song. It's straight out of the 50s. I mean, it's got this hominess, this warmth to it in the sound. Maybe not necessarily the lyrics, but for sure the sound. Like you're thrusted into this 50s sound, which is polarizing to the previous track, which was more ragtime.
It's very polarizing. This maybe you could apply some subtlety to, only because it's so soft, I think. And actually, John made a very interesting point here that the words, it almost feels like this could have been spoken word at some point. Like this could have actually benefited with some strip away the music itself, because the music is already so stripped it's almost just there. I mean, how invested can you really get in the 1950s doo-wop sway, because it's so slow. It's just a very light 6/8 time signature, but the lyrics really do transcend it. So it's strange because that's not exactly what I'm here for, but I'll take it.
In this case, the doo-wop actual music really did a great job of keeping the flow of the poetry that was in this song, because this is another one of those songs that was poetic and better because it was sung.
I feel like
this is a great post-breakup song, which is weird for doo-wop to do. Doo-wop does the exact opposite. It talks about trying to get love and being in love. This is that post-love song.
That's true.
And it's a great form of imagery for getting over the one who left you. Not you left them. They specifically left you. It's got some really, really great lines.
I scratch the bones of our once love. In my sleep I writhe and pitch with sharp... Each and every lyric here is just again, dripping with that imagery.
But who am I to disappear on account of all my shame and fear? What good is that? What will it show to the tinkerers above? The shackles on my shriveled wrist are tight and tethered to your drift, so drift you off to hell and back, and I will come along.
I'm telling you,
so morbid.
it's strong,
It's
and I see the subtle twist that's being done here, the ironic twist at least that's being done here with the doo-wop music. But what I meant before when I said it's not what I'm here for is only because the music sometimes does have to live up. I can take irony to a certain point, but I think there's a standard that she's presented on this album that just inevitably is going to leave me wanting more of that specifically. Because there's things about Lost on Me, track 2, and things about Canadian Cowboy that I just cannot quite pin a genre on as easily. I can say, oh yeah, it's kind of like it here, kind of like it there, but this is just clear. It's a clear doo-wop track. So musically, I do long for the original moments, the parts that are quintessentially Jocie Adams.
It's definitely doo-wop, but it's got such downturn moments in the actual music to fit with this more morbid theme she's going for in the song, that it's not just doo-wop. It's adapted, and it does adapt.
There. It does adapt. It really does.
And one of the things was the cello work was really some of the best stuff on the album for it. It just did a great job of
you have almost a cello solo at some point.
Yeah, I called it the interlude, not necessarily a solo. There was too much else going on, but the way
then solo's an interlude.
The way those strings were being used once again was just taking the genre and twisting it enough to fit within both the singing style and the lyrical style.
No, you're right, and she plays around with the doo-wop style even more than that. After the line "You, my dear, are all alone," then you get these little triplets that connect phrases. Triplets, you would never find really in a doo-wop track. So she does make it her own in points. It's just this is contrary to what I said before. I do think it's applied a little bit more subtly here.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, I would agree.
It's not slapping you in the face the way many other tracks are.
But
I don't need it all the time. You're right.
Can't. Yeah. I mean, I can't find that as a fault. Like, I get. I mean, it's no secret to the audience that you're a little more nitpicky than we are, although it depends on also what we're looking at sometimes. But generally, you're looking for finer points than sometimes me and John are. So I understand your complaint here, but I also think you're just overreacting a smidge. I think that this song fits still well to the theme. She still does more with it than a standard doo-wop track, and I think it's still that irony of the style versus the lyrics really works well.
You're right, but I'm gonna bring this up later. But there's a quality of showmanship here, which I think is a little. It depends on how you interpret it. I could easily see how this track, especially in its placement prior to the monstrosity that is coming up next, could be considered a breather and an integral part of showmanship. Yeah, maybe a bookend, perhaps the first act, considering the next two tracks are an act unto themselves.
Yes,
But in a certain way, the 50s doo-wop is just such a strong departure, I think, a little bit too much of a strong departure for me from what I really want to be her style. This is a debut album, so it's sort of a chance to kind of like make your mark in the biggest of ways, not scatter various set of influences throughout, if that makes any sense. Because it seems like she's definitely a very influenced artist. She's the kind that does amazing things with her influences that most others could only hope to do. Instead, their choice is usually to emulate, here and there. That's not her style. Her style is to make it her own. But it was a little bit weaker in this one track because she chose to go the ironic route. Just my point. That's it.
Sure.
Alright, so since we ended on that note...
Wait, one last thing. I'm seeing a theme in the songs I'm actually preferring, and while we're getting a lot of songs, and this is actually going to come up in the next track, we're getting a lot of songs that are really trying to combine multiple genres together, and we have a bunch of songs that are more sticking to one genre and adapting it to her style and her ideas. I'm finding more interest in the fusions, but more accessibility, more enjoyment in the ones that stick. That have an identity and stick to it, like Ditch. And a great example of really futzing around.
That's not how I see it. Like, identity, I don't know. I see more identity in Lost on Me. That's what I was saying before. Lost on Me is not a fusion. Canadian Cowboy is not so much a fusion, although you can be argued at moments. But it sticks, I think, more than these tracks do.
Well, then we have to... No, okay, now, because I kind of want to avoid it because it's so... This one's going to be hard for me.
Oh, I'll take it.
So
and we're going to do them together.
Yeah,
because it's going to be easier for me to do them together.
That's fine.
Well,
Honor the
then
Rainbows
let me treat
1 and
Honor
2.
the Rainbows 1, because the biggest thing you'll notice here is that vocals are just chorus work here, choir work. They're ahs and oohs. This lacks singing. This is a piece, if we were to have any. And up till now, this album has been very, very defined by her lyrics. Excuse me.
Yes, this we're talking, of course, about track 7 and 8, which together are Honor of the Rainbows Part 1 and Part 2. We're adding the word part. It's honestly just Honor of the Rainbows 1 and Honor of the Rainbows 2. They are obviously meant to go together, and we will review them as such. But going into Honor of the Rainbows 1, which serves as an introduction to the more meatier 6-7 minute second half, it is different because, yes, we are left with less lyrics, this kind of haunting nature, but it's a beautifully... It's not haunting in a creepy, terrifying way, haunting in its beauty and this airiness that this track track has.
It's primal and speaks to the old school idea of... I'm talking like, pre-Judeo-Christianity kind of idea of magic, of the out there, the greater than, the fae, the untamed. I mean, it's got an incredible, like...
I think ancient in many ways would just sum it up. I mean, this is evident.
But it's more than just ancient. It's natural in its sound. It's magical and almost mythical, almost fae in its sound.
Well, you can find that in the musical evidence is right here in front of your face. I found this a very interesting blend of wide intervals phasing into tight intervals. It starts out with this openness, right, that you get first from a heart-sinking bend on a cello, which in the beginning is all pizzicato. It's all just plucking. And this is when I started to get the idea that this would be sort of a modern masterpiece of composition, because it borrows from so much classical tradition, it's not even funny. A lot of times it centers around Baroque-styled stuff, but then again, it goes back further, like I said, to those ancient intervals, which are very wide, usually very open, lots of uses of fourths and fifths. But then it starts to get toward that impressionist side, which is why when I started to title this album Impressionistic Vaudeville, I have to not really lump those two words together as much as keep them separate. It's impressionistic on one hand, vaudevillian on the other. Here, we're totally in the impressionistic environment.
Yes. Debussy
comes to mind here. I actually thought, especially because of the cello piece itself, I thought sonata for... his cello sonata, which you can hear many great versions of, because there's also a violin in it. You can also hear Itzhak Perlman play the violin part. But Debussy cello sonata, in D minor specifically, that piece is phenomenal. And I think I would argue maybe there is some direct influence here based on the cello style alone. Also, we don't know if it's written entirely by Jocie Adams. I think most of this album was written by Jocie Adams, but this track sounds like it really needs a cello's touch, perhaps. Maybe some of it was written by the primary cellist on this album, but it's all just an exercise in intervals, really, rather than chords. It's suspensions and implications, and then knife-cutting choir to top it off. Almost like the soundtrack to the end of the world, which is why I really liked the way you put it, John, as Judeo-Christian insight into fae, you called it? Faes, you called it?
Yeah, it's sort of, I got a really strong visual idea of just desolation interspersed with just life.
The ambiance...
Which is where I get those sharp edges.
The ambiance of this song is very ethereal, very otherworldly, but not in the sense of outer space. It's otherworldly in the sense of another plane of existence, which is where this fae
Well,
kind of feeling
No, I
comes
see.
It's
from.
But there's
unchanged.
something very worldly to this. I actually
Yeah.
would not use ethereal as the word here. Maybe if you want to consider a separate voice, for instance, the when the choir steps in, that seems to be ethereal in its way. But the cello is grounded in reality and all the struggles that come with reality, which is why it can be very open and free, and at the same time very constrained, compact. And that's when you get these very these flurries, this flourish of arpeggiation here, which I would argue that most of this is built on an A major. The groundwork for the framework of this track is built on an A major, sort of a second inversion, and then it expands. The chorus steps in with this mode mixture, sort of taking it back down to A minor. So again, dramatic shifts just from chords. We're going from A, but then again we're switching all of those flats are just stepping in at once, and it moves through so many chords at once. You hear it going from Phrygian to Dorian, all these different modes. It is the culmination of all the previous intricacies back in Lost on Me, back in Canadian Cowboy. I think this is that culmination we've been waiting for, and interesting that we get it in instrumental and not with her voice, which otherwise is so pervasive.
But this is a great introduction and setup, because I can't divorce it from part 2. It's a great introduction to the visual ballet, the auditory ballet I got in part 2, which was just pure theatrical and had, as we said before, the whole band loves to mess with tempos. This had some amazing work with the control of the actual flow of the music, the control of the tempo of the music, and was pretty astounding that way.
Considering how strong, or at least the climactic pitches that Honor of the Rainbows 1 has, I tended to perceive Honor of the Rainbows 2 as a lot more enigmatic. Even in the chorus, changing places, switching places. I think at some point it says faces, but in any case, there is tension there. You hear the cello rising with sort of sevenths, as if it's kind of just an echo of what you got back in Honor of the Rainbows 1, which is why I call it sort of enigmatic. But otherwise, I think it's a great follow-up. At the same time, it all depends on what you're expecting here, and with a part 2. Because her concept here is that it sort of peters out in many ways. This is a very, very long track. I believe this is one of the longest in the album.
7 minutes, I think.
Oh, it's up there, at least.
Well, the thing also about this second half, though, I feel, is when coupled with Honor of the Rainbows Part 1, or Honor of the Rainbows 1, rather, I feel like together they create this kind of, a word we use, not loosely or liberally on this podcast, epic. It gets this kind of epic feel, and I mean epic in the sense of a story too. You get a complete narrative between the emotionality of track 7 and track 8 combined, and it has this sweeping nature that builds, and it's all speaking to the instrumentation that Steve was talking about.
That's actually why I use the word ballet, because of just the way the music is being chosen to both stand on its own in part 1 and to support the words in part 2. I can't see it being anything but interpretive. The words. Her patience was sorely tried and burned and burning. This burning was bitter and empty, not warm and kind. Her tongue was dirty with defense turning offense, turning circles. My love shrank and burned and writhed. Dude, that's really, really masterful wordplay right there.
I mean, her lyrics. I mean,
rhyme?
it's common knowledge at this point in the record that her lyrics are She's a masterful lyricist, and she knows poetry. And this song really does lend to that ballet aspect that you're talking about. It really does give a performance aspect in this grand scheme and story that it's trying to tell.
I think another reason ballet is pretty appropriate for this is also because if you consider, like, back in early 19th century Russian-style ballets, I think they were some of the most flexible in terms of form. Like, that's around the time when people actually started to consider that, wow, symphonies are kind of rigid in their way. The form of a symphony even though you can stretch and do amazing things with it, they're kind of rigid. Ballets are the kind of thing where you can sort of make up your own rules in a sense. Granted, of course, there are rules, but ballets, I'm telling you, the kind of ballets that were written back then, and Stravinsky was a master of this, just doing things that people had never done with the form before. It makes it so that every element, every dance puts on a new face in its own way, and that does seem to be kind of what this album is doing. And between these two tracks, I think it is even more so what it's doing here. It also gives you a chance to play with how you perceive your rise and fall, because in a traditional epic sense, since you used the term before you use the term epic, I would say epic is the kind of thing that also has been given very rigid standards. You need a specific set of rules before you can be an epic. And then here, it's kind of playing around with that. So in many ways, it is a modern style of epic, because to be a traditional style of epic today would not be epic. So,
well, yeah, it definitely does give a sense of that.
It also, the whole theme of the lyrics themselves it's about a woman's pursuit to the gates of hell for love, which in and of itself is really interesting, especially with a lot of the lines. In her loudest shoes she clopped closer to her proffered destiny. The devil's door was in sight.
I think that's just colorful spelling right there. I'm sure it's just preferred destiny, but
it's like Orpheus in reverse.
Yeah, all right, I'll buy that.
Instead of reaching Hades, wooing the devil, and removing her love, she instead intimidates the devil so much he actually just sends her back. It's a great story, and that's why I also see that very primal, that very ancient kind of a feel to it as well. That capturing of the old school, which is why I can't consider part one without part two.
Yeah. No, you're right. And just to speak one more time, because I seem to be struggling with this concept on how she's treating the arc within the arc here, the arc of these two tracks. You have the very, very powerful, foreshadowing. And then I think that could be, the slow decay here could be defined by these two lines. Groping her pen she lay, lost of her rainbow dreams. She settled, heedful of the in-between. That's a pull away if I've ever heard one.
Yeah.
There's something very longing about the end, and I love stories that just kind of explain. You know what? Sometimes things do not go as you might prefer them.
Some of my favorite science fiction movies end on a down note because it's more fascinating.
It's more fascinating to see reality. Let's face it.
Well, yeah, and that's why I've always preferred the Shakespearean tragedies. Tragedies. Where it's hard.
Now, tragedy is something I would like to see. A travesty of a tragedy, which... wow, a travesty of a tragedy, which is probably redundant, but at the same time...
I preferred Hamlet to Taming of the Shrew. I mean, I like downers.
We get it.
When it comes to those stories.
Actually, a travesty of a tragedy might
be
negate it. No, that would just... it would fail at being a tragedy, exactly.
So then it would be uplifting. Speaking of... No, I'm not even going to try and do it. So my biggest problem with ending our discussion on Honor of the Rainbows 1 and 2 is that we have to move on to Powder Train. So Powder Train is track 9. This is the only song I would say that doesn't fit on the record. And it does thematically, I guess. But so Powder Train...
This is merely an extension of my argument back in the case with Ditch.
I disagree.
I know you disagree in the case
with
Ditch.
Far more extreme than Ditch was.
Ditch isn't even close.
This song takes a country turn sound-wise very, very early on. I nicknamed it the cocaine song because that's exactly what it's about. She mentions the word cocaine at least 24 times. It's just this bizarre tongue-in-cheek song that's trying to be humorous, but I just...
Let me be clear about something, because I know you're being really strict with this, that this is a unique thing on this album, but I'm telling you, between Whiskey Man, Ditch, and this track, these tracks are this is a plan of hers, I feel. They are the in-between tracks, and they explore separate things. So I'm not arguing their role here. They have a very powerful role. And, to be clear, considering these tracks have certain similarities, one might say that I'd have some kind of bias against doo-wop or country and whatnot, these sort of more muted rural styles. That's not the case here. It's simply about their place in the album. They're very, very different, and they're not the meat, they are the sides amidst this album. They explore great things. They are just simply it is a form of showmanship.
Well,
it may not have been what I wanted at times, but it is a form of showmanship, and it'll still count at the end.
I would agree that it's a form of showmanship, but then I plain just don't like it, I don't think. I mean, I didn't enjoy the song at all. It just knocked me out of what, like,
well, you don't see a connection to the earlier tracks, but I do.
I know, I see a connection to the earlier tracks, but for me it's just too harsh of a jump out of 8 to 9 that I couldn't enjoy it.
There's irony here again.
Yes, that's the whole thing. The whole song is talking about how cocaine is being used as a replacement for love. How it's actually the addiction of what love she felt before is being tried to make up with this false sense. With lines, it's sweet cocaine that guides my trailing id. Id. It's talking about id. It's talking about the inner body of a person, the inner mind, the depths of their being. This is not just, coke. No. That's
true.
why she never says coke. It's cocaine.
I get it.
It's a name of this monster.
I get it. So it fits the theme. It fits the structure. I still don't like the song. I think it's, as far as quality and structure goes, it's safe. It's predictable. I just don't enjoy it.
And
I get what you say theme-wise, and that's fine, and I concede to that. But I just don't think it holds up. Even though there's showmanship, it just doesn't hold up to the quality of the rest of the album. This is like what I said before, and I'm kind of between in this regard, because it's a case where does irony supersede musical entwining? I mean, I like when the musicality of an album is intertwined in a way. I do like changes, but at the same time, the changes can't seem, how to put this, arbitrary. And I'm not even necessarily saying that this is arbitrary. Obviously, using a sort of country-esque, my daddy left me when I was 9 years old. He was an alcoholic. He ran away. That kind of trope that's all over country music. And then my man, he left out on me. I feel like that's here. So there was a clear choice in, I think, using this sort of country blues framework for this kind of track. But yes, it's not quite as creative to me as some of the other choices earlier. It's more predictable. So I do see Matt's point on that.
Yes, it's not the best track on the album. It probably is the worst.
Yes, it probably
but
is.
It's still coupled
It's the worst track on an otherwise great album, as we've discussed.
It's still
so far.
really, really, really good song.
And the other thing I was going to say about Powder Train and Whiskey Man and Ditch to some extent is that even within their genres, like, you have to concede that within their genres, these tracks are a master of those genres.
Yes, my opinions are not anywhere in saying that this is bad or poorly made. It's purely taste at this point for me. I just don't like this song. I don't enjoy it. I liked Whiskey Man and Ditch. I think it's just a taste thing here. It hits enough of the country tropes, even though doing them a bit better, to hit the right nerve for me to not like it. That said, it's still not a bad track, and it's by far, even though it's by far probably the worst track on the record.
Well, we're definitely on the verge of being redundant here, but I do think, even much as my feeling is kind of similar to Matt on this track here, I think that these three tracks, the fact that they are sparse throughout the album, is still creative in its way. They break up the album, they break up the meat, and the meat really, really never falters, as we see in the very next track. Might I deserve to have a dream? Ah, yes, to have a dream.
So this song, Steve said from the get-go that this song had a very low sound, and I don't mean low as in volume, low as in
the band Low.
Of slowcore fame.
Kind of slowcore influenced by grunge,
yeah.
And the element really there is the the very grungy guitar that's beneath all this,
Mm-hmm.
which is kind of separate from, these are, again, we're having a genre shift here, but this is not exactly so much of a trope in this case. It really is used to its fullest extent here. I adore old Low, like the band Low around the era of like 94, 95. I think that her long harmonized melodies, these duets over this sort of early 90s grunge guitar really, really fits in a way. Because you don't often get those long melodies over that style, although Low did do it. So this is perfectly fitted to that.
Right. Well, also the beauty in this song and the emotion that it comes from that vocalization over that grunge guitar. I mean, it really hammers home that heart-wrenching nature of this song.
I cried.
Oh, did you?
I really did tear up during this song. It's probably one of the most emotional pieces I've heard since The Heist. And that had Same Love, among others, that all were on my top 5 last year. This song speaks of wishing and longing and desiring death just to be with the one you love, but desiring it so hard and then being denied it. It's got an incredible line in the vocals. Open the door, let me crawl through to your home. The vault is open, release your soul. That line, the way it's sung, tears me up every single time I've heard it. It is an incredible emotional journey here.
Well, and also the twist emotionally that wanting to die to be with the one you love and being denied death is typically a cause for celebration, to not die, to avoid death. But in this case, it's not, because it's not what the narrator wants. The narrator wants to be with their true love. This idea that the only happiness is the one you're with, and nothing else, even if typically joyous, will do the trick. And that's where the true sadness and depression is.
I think she has a way of achieving that again, and it's also through the breathing power of this track. There is use of silence throughout here. Moments where the volume just swells slightly and then dissipates completely. And then she has to pause before she takes that next breath of phrase. I adore that. And again, there's other similarities here. She has the same vibrato I felt in this track as I found in Mimi Parker, the female lead of the band Low. Strange that her former Jocie Adams' former band was the Low Anthem, which made me wonder if there was any kind of connection here, because there was such a similarity in styles here. But it's a style that works for me.
I mean, also the one other thing though is that use of silence. I mean, we've talked about on the podcast before how one of the most powerful things you can do in music, if done right, because it's also been done wrong, but done right, is the use of silence. And it's I will happily say, expert use of silence in this song. It really conveys that heart-wrenching nature. And I will keep using the word heart-wrenching because it's how, really I felt like my heart was...
No more an avid use for silence than in the case of depression, where minutes are often spent. It often feel like hours, exactly.
Yes. And this idea that your heart is literally being twisted and wrenched, and it really does feel that harsh and that horrible.
I can't talk anymore about this song.
He'll cry again.
No, really, it's...
He will.
Okay, well,
I connected a little too much with this one.
That's fine. I'll take your man card later. Let's move on to Swimming. So Swimming is the final track on the record, our track 11 and conclusion.
I'm going to say up front, this song didn't need to be here. The fact that it was here
was gravy, man.
Binded this album in such a way.
This was dessert.
I mean, this album really could have ended on that down note.
Absolutely.
And the funny thing is that when this track started, I was actually thinking, oh, don't take it away. I thought it was going to go back to, a light-hearted, carefree, positive track, much like those other, what I interpret to be the filler songs on this album were. But it's not, because this is her coup de grace for the showmanship factor. She steps in with that full-on jam, and she actually puts on a show. something this album has not really been doing. I mean, the vaudevillian sense, it's telling a story, not really putting on a show, per se. Here it does that.
And this track, I mean, the one word to really define this track is bravado. She's just showing off at this point and doing it well.
And she damn well has the right to, because this was a song that actually got me moving. The chord descent right before that final step in with the ba-ba-bas
Yeah.
and the yeah, all that stuff.
Well, it was the fact, it was, the song gave you about 30 seconds to get over the previous track.
Yeah, that was
before it
tasteful.
introduced what I like to call the Copacabana. Because I could easily see that this song...
Did you say did you say Coca-Cabana? Cabana?
Yeah. At the Coca.
It's the Copacabana.
I mean, Copa.
But that may
Excuse
very
me.
well have been a Freudian slip, considering some themes here.
And this is another part where she's really using the idea of sprekazang.
Brekazong.
The
Love that
ability
word.
to talk sing to full force. And it was once again this might be the most interesting, not the best, but the most interesting vocals on the album. Just the way in her phrasing is just so distinct here.
The vocals are kind of secondary to the music, and or rather, they're secondary because it's not quite as melodic. I mean, there's still very powerful melody here, but it's really about that jam that kind of ties us together.
Then it's even tertiary because the lyrics, I think, are even still as strong as the jam that's going on there. Because swimming is one idea, but the actual way she links the idea of swimming, and then there came the one who is swimming through my veins.
True and clean was he. That is where another little... another influence, and I say influence in the most incorrect way, because it's amazing how this album has so far been able to fuse artists which I otherwise revel at. I mean, Shower Warden in this case. Shower Warden from My Brightest Diamond came immediately to mind because she's another artist who has, I wouldn't say similar inflection to Jocie Adams, at least in the rest of her work, but at least in this track, Jocie Adams is very similar. They both have their damned, their personality is just, it's out there. They step beyond melodies, and that's their power as vocalists. They're not constrained by melodies. They're not constrained by the instruments around them. They will leap out based on the words that they wrote, and that's clearly what she's doing here. That's what she's doing throughout the album. But this time, again, little minute inflections seem to reach out. Even going back to that kitty cat comment back in I am a cat and I keep on swirling around.
The playfulness.
The playfulness. It's all within her work. So I'm not implying that there's any direct influence here. I'm implying that no matter whether there is, it's a very, very good trend. It's a great trend, which I would like to see a lot more of, and I think would carry modern music to a much greater peak, I would argue.
Well, I also think a real strength in this album, and especially for the musicians that participated in the band, these musicians really let their passion and their personality shine through clear as a bell in the musicality, in the lyrics, and in the singing. It's just, you know who these people are. They wear their heart on their sleeves and they don't hold back, and it really shines through.
They're talking about taking men and comparing them to empty beer cans and throwing them away, and how very little impact they've had on her life. And yet that second verse in Swimming, where she's really getting into that guy that changed it all for her. In his wake, the charms at my windows, whispered temptations at night. That is just the imagery here, the way in which the turn of phrase is being used is just very distinct and very unique in modern music. It's very refreshing, and this is some of the things that I look for in music, regardless of genre. I can't get over some of the things that were done in this album. Just from a lyric standpoint.
At least, I think if you're going to tie together the core lyrics here, the ones that seem to be most emphasized, This really is a the one album. You know, the search for the one kind of thing. Which there are so many out there, but
I'd
so
argue that.
many cannot reach this kind of climax.
I think this is the album after the one has left. This
Would
is
you
the
would you really
story
take that
after the one.
considering Swimming though?
Swimming is moving on. Everything else was just about how sucky and detrimental life is for the most part. Nothing in any of the other songs actually gives the idea of permanence of love.
No, that's true.
It's really that search.
No, you know, I guess you could
And
see this
longing
last
for
track
the
here
past.
as obsession.
Or no, I think this is the track that moves on. This is the one because the
Identify.
Oh, but I don't
Identify.
see that. I don't see that in He Came. The
f-
one who was swimming through my veins, true and clean was he. This sounds like at least a permanent imprint, at least.
No,
Maybe there's no permanence, but permanent imprint.
It was that first verse talking about how vapid relationships are. It's got that line that really stood out between the verse and the chorus, that kind of like pre-chorus. What may strike the curious eye.
Well, I had originally...
As in a leaf is... It's the changing of the guard, a leaf flipping over. This is a change. Because the difference thematically between the first and second verse is just too great. It went from vapid, very much skin deep, to really some very, very in-depth emotional connection.
Well, I do see them moving on. It's just that I had seen the first verse as sort of a, you know, it all seems to be moving on in retrospect once you consider the one in the present.
Well, no, I see it as more of just not being able to connect anymore. All relationships are vapid because of the inability to connect. And then there came...
No, that's just it. Well, we're really splitting hairs
Especially-
here, of
but-
course.
You are
no, it's-
splitting one hair so finely that it's barely a hair anymore. Because the reality is, you're both right. Because that's the great thing about
I'm more
well-written lyrics,
No.
is they are very open to interpretation.
No, I'm more right.
No, I'm more
Mr.
bro- I'm more
Morright, why don't you
broadly
take
right.
us right into your wrap-up?
This is a really difficult album. Not because I don't know where it stands, I just don't know exactly where it stands. This is an approaching 5 kind of an album. We talked about the downturns, and Powder Train and Whiskey Man are definitely the low parts of the album for me. But then again, I was singing along with Whiskey Man, and even I have some defenses for Powder Train. Otherwise, all these songs were just... They gave me something different in every single chord and every single verse. It was really, really great. There was no sameness. There was no washout of quality from song to song, which is not something you'd expect with a folk idea. Yeah, folk can be great, but you expect a lot of similarities. And while there is a lot of differences in styles, the core is still through and through folk rock, folk indie, whatever you want to call it. It's still connected by that idea. That plus the depressing nature, I have a lot to say about this. The depressing nature, the great lyrics, the beautiful harmonies, the beautiful voices, everything. The one thing it was actually lacking was monstrous instrumentation. And that would have put it at a 5. I would be able to forgive stuff like Powder Train if you really got something musically on the instrument side that made it, scary to listen to, like Godsticks was. That being said, it's a 4.8. It really is just up there. This is a really beautiful album. Yeah, it was just missing that one last little thing to bounce it to a near perfection.
I want to say at the top that initially I don't think that this album hit every note of my personal tastes. There were moments of it. I think on the second and third listen, I really got more acquainted with it and found things that allowed me to enjoy it a lot more. I mean, the lyrics were definitely a big part of it. The the thing that was really big for me was that you cannot deny talent, and I'll always be the first to say, just because you don't like something doesn't mean it ain't good. It sometimes does, but not always. And in this case, I mean, even though I had issues with Powder Train, which is really the only song I actually took great issue with, that I flat out did not like, it wasn't a bad song. But overall, I mean, it's interesting to see this band that sounded at the get very traditional, very folk, with a bit of fusion, go in these different directions and try these different things. I love bands that actually do genre hopping, and there aren't a lot of bands that do that. I mean, there are some that I can actually think of and that I would talk at length about that genre hop a bit. But it was refreshing to see this band do that. And their female vocalist is a standout powerhouse. She can sing unlike a lot of others I've heard, so that was, of course, very impressive to me. But I just don't know that I fell in love with it on the same level Steve and John did. So that hurt it a little bit. I mean, emotionally, though, it is off the charts, and that's where I teeter. It's not a 5. Based on the way, what I look for in a 5, I just didn't have that connection. That extra special, unspeakable something that takes me to that connection. You know, I can Steve speaks to technicality, and John speaks to lyrics on the average, and I tend to connect emotionally. While I did connect emotionally with this album, there wasn't that extra something that really made it part of me, and that's where it lost me. So I'm gonna bring it down a little bit lower than John. I don't think it's a 4.5 because I think it's still a step above that 4.5 mark, but it didn't hit a 4.8 either for me. It's a 4.75. It gets there, but I'm just like John was saying, there's that extra something. For him, it was that extra instrumentation. For me, there was that extra emotional connection that just wasn't there. I connected with a good chunk of it, but it didn't go all the way. It didn't hit me in the feels, as Sage and Kim would say. So that's where my opinion on the album stands.
Well, I think in many ways this is a textbook debut album, in that I detect a slight attempt to prove the band's chemistry. So sometimes you'll get certain odd choices and sporadic changes, and they might seem sporadic to the untrained ear, but of course they are integrated in their own way. Either way, they're bold. So interpreted another way, that's just it. It's dripping with personality. There's very little conformity here, neither toward larger trends, and they can't yet conform to their own style, because that's still in the oven. So I tend to love debut albums for that very reason, overlooking those odd choices in favor of the new, fresh. That's why I picked this. And that's not to say that I don't anticipate a future discography here. You know, it's a debut album, but music is a very fickle beast in that maturity can be kind of a blessing and a curse at the same time. It's their newness where they prove themselves, and I think the attempt shines through, and I love it for that. Now, regarding a track like Honor of the Rainbows 1, I think the climactic apex of that track just almost diminishes the rest of the album just a bit for my tastes. And I know that seems harsh, but sometimes that's the nature of the album. As much as you want to present a story and take people on your journey, much of that is an illusion masked by peaks and valleys that people can either tune into or tune out of. And since albums don't come with a "hey, pay attention" button, showmanship and arc are really the greatest tools to bind your album and ensure your story is told effectively, and to the widest audience. So this album sometimes fizzles in that ability to bind it. To me, that occurs in cases like Powder Train, a little in Whiskey Man, a little in Ditch. Again, those are really the three tracks that where it does that, but they're spaced out throughout the album, and I know consciously that it's part of the plan, that it's her way of integrating her styles, things that have influenced her, and sort of throwing them into the album. But face it, I love her natural work. I love the work that is so much harder to pinpoint. That's on the rest of the album, and I think that really hits its climax in Honor of the Rainbows. Even though to a trained ear, of course, you can still look at that and say, oh yeah, it's influenced from like ancient Greek here and Baroque here, but at the end of the day, it's a modern contemporary classical masterpiece, and the same could be said in a looser way for Lost on Me and Honor of the Rainbows 2. And even Canadian Cowboy, which has a way of blending and merging in such a unique way. There's just so many other ways in which this album surprises. A plethora of non-contiguous ways, you could almost say, separately. So, I think, this is going to sound very ironic, but space might have helped a little bit more in certain areas, and then tightness might have helped in other areas, such as binding the strong tracks to the other strong tracks. But it's really splitting hairs. I'd say maybe more instrumental pieces, like integrating the cello instead of constantly shuffling the instrumentation, maybe. Her voice is the binding factor here, and it pretty much runs the show. But because of its prevalence, there is a little bit of a sameness in her choice of register and resonance that pervasively leaves other instrumental talents hanging in the backwater, save for like the sparest of moments, like Honor of the Rainbows 1. So, I think that as beautiful as her voice is, that's just it. It's beautiful, and maybe might be used in more of a sparing way, a sparing climactic way. I thought of her voice like a beautiful gem that glimmers best when worn on the fancier occasions. So, this is sort of an everything-heavy album. But the integration is really my only issue. And it's integration on an album and song level, because of those certain little separators here and there. I think this is going to end up around a 4.75, around the same as Matt here. Nah, actually, 4.8. 4.8. This is a 4.8 album. There's too much else here that is groundbreaking in its own right.
It's just too awesome. Here.
Yeah. Alright. I think I've said my piece.
Well then.
Buy it? Let me guess.
No, yeah. I mean, I do want to amend something. I realized that I kind of sold my wrap up average a little short, because not having something between listen to it and burn it is kind of extreme. And I actually think there was a fourth option in there when we started. Either way, those options are irrelevant because this is a purchase. It's worth spending money on, especially a debut album. You know, a lot of bands struggle in their first couple of years, and honestly, in the first 10 years is where a band is made or broken half the time, and this is definitely worth spending money on. For all the junk that people spend money on besides the point, definitely go buy Arc Iris' debut album. It's worth it. It's on Spotify. I'm sure it's on iTunes. I'm sure you can buy it in the store. Go grab this record. It's definitely worth it.
The funny thing is, I think the one problem with your buy it, listen to it, burn it is, of course, that double meaning of burn it. Your burn it could always mean burn it to a disc, which in that case would be just a step below buy it, because then it's like, oh, burn it from your friend. Let your friend copy it for you and everything. So then burn should be second and not third.
Well, so then I'll clarify, to set it on fire is the worst rating an album can get.
No,
when he says it that slowly, it's all the more...
We also can include the hunt down the artist and take away their fingers and tongues so they may never produce a travesty like that again. Level of rating.
There you go. See, you gotta be more...
That's my bottom rating.
With your ratings.
That's a 0.
This is my wrap-up. Shush.
Well...
No, you already did your wrap-up. You're going back and amending your wrap-up. No double amending wrap-ups.
I think this is a buy it, to be honest.
No, it's absolutely a buy it. Hands down. That's what I said.
I'm getting a little upset, because Steve keeps bringing better albums than me.
Hey, this is one where I can't even say, like, I took from my own archives, or I took from my own related. This really was one of my most amazing random finds for me.
Steve's fully aware that last year my album of the year was his pick, and this year so far, my album of the year is his pick. So
I
don't
will
even
get
fight
you
about
on
it.
my side eventually.
Well,
We're all very
bring something better than St. Vincent, and then I will be.
I was gonna bring St. Vincent.
Well, I'll tell you this. This is why I want to move into a little topic here, and it's based on what you said before, Matt. You said something about what makes or breaks an artist, especially within their first 10 years and maybe even earlier. Of course, this is the debut album for Arc Iris, and I'm feeling pretty positively about their future work here, and I think that boils down to one thing: personality.
Yeah, I mean, well, also, the thing is about making and breaking a band now, it's different than it even was 10 years ago.
What was it 10 years ago? I would have always said it was personality. in
Well,
some
no,
extent.
I'm not saying that it's not personality, but I'm saying there are way more avenues to get yourself out there than there were 10, 20 years ago. I mean, the fact that self-produced products and stuff on YouTube can get out and spread like wildfire so easily now, you can happen to fall into success. It doesn't happen all the time.
That's funny, because I think
But
a
it
couple
does
weeks ago
happen.
that was my argument, that people do fall into success. It's more like in an idealistic world. I think the staying power of something falls on personality.
That's the difference.
Ah,
And
there we
that's
are.
the difference. And that's
Not
what I was
necessarily
leading you
whether
to.
a band will be made or broken by 10 years' time, but whether they will have the staying power beyond it.
I have a point. Take a look at, like, my favorite example of a one-hit wonder and people who have failed is Semisonic. A band that created the song Closing Time, which was a huge hit. Everybody knows that song.
I'm so upset they didn't produce anything nearly as good as that.
They had a successful career. They still make albums. But there was no staying power. They still made albums, but nobody remembered them really beyond Closing Time, because they were so powerful out of the gate, and then they just never quite lived up to it. And that's what sometimes I'm worried about with bands like this. Having a very powerful first album is also dangerous.
No, I do agree. Also, based on debut albums, as I said, I love debut albums. It's not that I don't look forward to future discography, but sometimes there is a loss of that personality and staying power as a result, because debut albums are just rife with this force to be original, and I feel that this album's dripping with it. So later on, who knows?
It's not personality you're talking about. It's novelty.
Oh, that's not it at
No,
all.
it's not
No.
true at all. Novelty is not staying power.
There's no novelty to this album at all.
No. Yes, it is novel. In fact, that it's actually revisiting some very, very old school ideas and trying to reinvent them and make them fresh. Regardless of the level of personality, the novelty, not novelty in the negative connotation, but the ability to be novel and unique.
Then
Is
I
what
would
I'm
being
talking
literal.
about here.
He's being literal. Then I would
The
just use
literal word.
But then I would just use the word unique, which is a better word.
Or personality, what I use.
But being
Yeah.
unique and being novel is different. Being unique is just being a completely different, intricate little snowflake. But being novel is actually an intelligent way of doing it. It's an
Novel is a
intelligent
word
way.
that has gained a connotation, though. at this
Yeah,
point
I
in the
wouldn't use
game.
it in this situation.
People- I mean,
No,
I think
I'm
that-
using it in the situation in which it
The
uses.
hipsters have taken control in this department. We can't take that word back.
Don't
we
let
can't.
us.
I'm taking the word back because being novel is being ingenious in a unique way. You can be ingenious and be the very same, but being smart and about something in a unique way. Being creative in a unique way. Personality and staying power comes from someplace else. It's being able to take that novel idea and expand upon it and actually to allow it to propagate. If you want to break out, you have to have a novel idea. But if you want to stay, you have to work within that idea and keep expanding upon it.
That's probably true, and I do think that's often where many bands falter on their second and third. They either think they can... It's just as I said in my wrap-up. It's either as they could copy other styles or copy themselves. Many bands just copy themselves endlessly, and that's not really a sign of staying power.
I mean, the biggest problem with bands that do so well on their debut records is that you sometimes curse yourself to not live up to it. And I mean, the one band that first comes to mind about breaking the mold as far as being able to succumb and overcome their debut album is System of a Down. Their debut album was incredible. And I thought for sure they were going to bury themselves under it because it was just so unique. It was different. It was not like anything I had heard from the new metal scene at the time. But then Toxicity blew the self-titled the initial album out of the water. Toxicity is my favorite album that they've made, and it was just they took what they knew and then turned some of it on their head and expanded upon and blew out what they knew and did it in a way that kept people engaged and kept people coming back.
And I would even actually say Steal This album was just as good as Toxicity.
I would agree.
I like Toxicity better because I heard it first. But Steal This album was right there next to it, side by side, when it came to quality and innovation in its field. It was only the weird things they did on Hypnotized and Mesmerized that disenfranchised me.
Yeah, that's where a lot of people were lost, I feel.
I think it also depends on where your personality is most strong, or what points in your life your personality comes out the most. For some, it really is in their youth. For some, it's in their maturity. It goes hand in hand with personality in many ways. And then for others, it's completely variant on life conditions at the time, whether you're in love, whether you're out of love, when you're in a state of depression, when you're in a state of joy. Either way, one of those could be when you're at your most personable, and then one could be when you're at your most flat.
And I have an example for an emotional tragedy setting the standard for an impactful, huge album. No doubt. Their self-titled album was good. Tragic Kingdom, after her and Tony, who's the bassist, broke up. I mean, Tragic Kingdom was mind-blowing as far as emotion goes. Don't Speak is still one of the most powerful breakup songs of my generation, for sure. And then they followed up with Return to Saturn, where, the band was on their way to becoming popular and famous and better adjusted. And it's just, sometimes great work is born out of tragedy, and it's also hard to live up to that, because you can't fabricate raw emotion like that.
That's definitely true.
Actually, one of mine and Matt's, and I believe Steve as well, favorite comedians, that I won't speak for Steve on this, Christopher Titus, who really, he's got a fifth special that's either out or coming out.
His newest special came out already, Voices in My Head, which is by far his best one yet.
I know, and he doesn't do a new special until he's had
something happen.
Terrible happen in his life. He loves having something terrible after the fact because it has given him a career. I think that's actually how he starts the fifth one.
Yeah.
I'm back on tour because something bad happened.
The newest one was based on he did an entire special about his greatest mistakes, his biggest screw-ups.
Yeah. I mean, the first one was about the stuff he went through in his early life. Then End of the World Tour was right after his father passed. Love is Evil was all about him getting a divorce. I mean, this guy, while it's some really messed up stuff he's gone through.
Pain is a powerful motivator.
Yeah, he does a hell of a job doing that.
Here's an example, and this is actually one of the cases I was thinking of when I was citing debut albums versus, maturity and all that. TV on the radio. I've been a fan of this band. I can actually say I've been a fan of them for as long as they've existed, since their demo album, OK Calculator, which I won't count. But their debut album, for real, was called Desperate Youth, Bloodthirsty Babes. It came out in 2004, and here was this alternative, abstract band from Williamsburg, Brooklyn, which before that was actually like a thing. And they came up with some of the darkest tones that I had heard thus far in modern music at that point. The album was grounded in this sort of disturbed bitterness that was very raw for its time. And I can only infer this because I don't actually know the life stories of its members, but starting as early as their second album, Return to Cookie Mountain, all of a sudden everything was hunky-dory, and their usage of soul and synth to the low, slowcore negative end was all of a sudden just flipped on its head to be a little bit more relatable, and interestingly enough, this is when the band really took off in popularity, because they were much more accessible. Yeah, and it was just generally happier tunes. Who are they to complain, obviously? Who am I to complain? But you know what? I'm going to complain, because I think that their personality was a little more prevalent within Desperate Youth. It's just my personal opinion.
But-
Maybe this is not the opinion of other fans of the band, for sure, but it's my opinion.
And you could also be completely wrong. It's possible that their actual personality was everything after.
That's entirely possible.
So-
And that's something where it's all inference. It's not,
Yeah.
This is the kind of thing that's really based on the listener, not really the person. You will never know the artist, truly. Some can say maybe they will, or they think they can based on listening to certain lyrics. Oh, it's like we're one. It's like they know me, bonding
Well, there's
together.
that rare chance that you actually know the artist, too.
Those are not the rare chances that I'm speaking of.
I get that.
Yes.
I think, though...
Removed fandom.
I think all in all, though, I mean, the strongest thing in staying power is creating intelligently without getting in your own way, is the baseline.
Fair
If you
enough.
can create intelligently without getting in your own way, the fans will find you.
But I will concede that example proves me wrong, really, because that's a case where personality kind of won out over staying power, because what I found to be the most personable was not an example of their staying power at all.
Yeah.
With TV and the radio. So, yeah, personality is just something that I personally hope for. It's not something that really, I think, if we're reaching a conclusion, it's that it doesn't have any connection with staying power whatsoever.
That's true. And speaking of things with absolutely no personality, why don't we go to our spam mail?
Oh, the segue. Oh, the segue burns.
He's getting better at it.
Yeah, no, a little.
That was an
If you
attempt.
fail enough, there will be successes. You would know.
No,
It's your
that is
life.
not true. You can continuously fail.
That's true, John. You are
In
an
fact, you're
example
the
of that.
definition of insanity. You keep trying to do the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. You keep coming up with the same result.
That's why we're friends.
Oh, okay. I'm not going to argue that one.
No, you
No.
can't.
All the time, I used to read smaller articles or reviews that also clear their motive. And that is also happening with this article, which I am reading now.
And who is this by?
Wholesale Women's Clothing.
One of our biggest fans.
One of our biggest.
Doesn't even hold a candle to Jordan.
Air Jordan Fire Red.
Yeah,
I kind of want to
They
just call
love
him,
us.
I just want to call him Jordan because it
Actually,
sounds
no.
so much cooler.
They were really fans of us around our earlier episodes. I think they tapered off around the 50s. They must have lost sight of who we are.
I guess they don't.
And our
They didn't like
personality.
what we've become.
That's
You know what? The
Our
only one who stuck
personality
around
just
was actually
stuck
Dre.
around.
Dre was the only one that
Trey
stuck
Beats.
around.
That's true.
Why do you keep adding the extra words? I like using the very shorthand.
Because
obvious,
people might
celebrity.
confuse them for actual fans.
I'm okay with
For
that.
Dre? Oh, yeah, Dre's our fan. No, yeah, sure.
There are other Dre's. There's not just one Dre.
And I'm pretty sure he's not actually a doctor.
I'm pretty sure he would have changed his name a long time ago. Then again, I have the same name as an astronaut, so I should probably change my name.
Why? Astronauts are awesome.
I know, but what chance do I have then?
That's true. That's true. You should change your name. You're terrible.
Oh, crap.
So next week we're doing
Support.
something we actually haven't done in a while. We have a fan recommendation. D-Rock Lee, who's a fan of the podcast, he posted on our Facebook wall asking us to review the latest from Dumbfounded. Dumbfounded's latest record is called Old Boy John, and that's what we'll be taking on next week.
Hey, old boy John. Hey, John. Hey, John, are you old boy? Hey, John. Hey, John.
I'm going to rip it off and shove it up your nose.
So
Spelled right, though.
this new record is not. This is an artist, Dumbfounded, that none of us have heard, and it's his brand new record. So this should be another interesting experience. I do know I'm pretty sure he's a rapper. It's hip hop.
He is, in fact, a rapper, a Korean American entertainer.
So we will bring that to you guys next week. It's exciting to actually have some fan recommendations. I want to give a shout out to Kristen as well, who gave us another fan recommendation that we will hopefully get to towards the end of the month or early next month, depending on when we decide to do that next one. But this one's been sitting in queue for a while, so I wanted to make sure we get to it. Thank you, Dee, for the recommendation, and we will be taking that on next week.
Well,
Funny
I
you
hope-
felt the need to clarify, John, but that he was a Korean American entertainer, which I feel is a much broader category than the rapper.
Well, actually,
Let
it's
me
a little
clarify
bit-
with the broader category. It's odd. It's just odd.
No.
what he did.
He's a little bit. It's a little bit different. You don't actually see many mainstream Asian Americans rapping.
I suppose. No, I guess I can't think of any examples to that effect.
And it's
so,
not
yeah.
just
I
it's
can,
not just
but
rapping.
that's because I know
It's
a lot
not
of
just
rappers.
regular hip
Well, then
hop.
chime in, man. Only me hanging in the dust.
Adam Warrock is an Asian American
There
rapper.
you go.
Anyway, so yes, this is what you have to look forward to next week. More of us arguing about nationality. No, I hope not. I can't.
Splitting hairs. It's what we do.
It is what we do. And on that shocking note, and as always, music is life, and life is good.